Hi, I'm Peter Buckle, and this is Design Office Hours, a podcast about design, designers, and careers in design. I talk about creating, leading, and navigating creative work at this place we call work. Whether you're a student, just starting out, or an established designer, welcome to the show. This show is also, as usual, about your input, so send in your topics and questions. How to get in touch with me in the show? Email designofficehours@peterbuckle.com. And follow me on Instagram at Design Office Hours. And last but not least, head over to peterbuckle.com/Design Office Hours. As usual, very long words here, to sign up for my mailing list to get notified about new episodes and other stuff we're doing here. All right, let's get into it. Today, we don't have the classic Q&A session. Today, I'm talking to Blair Hasty. Blair is based out of Atlanta, has spent more than 15 years designing products across consumer tech, retail, lifestyle categories, from wearables and smart devices to packaging, retail environments for brands like Chick-fil-A, Verizon, and our favorite drink as designers, Coca-Cola. He went on to found Bear, a consumer electronics accessory company, and now leads Crafted By, that he also founded, a design and development agency that helps founders and product teams to turn ideas into manufactured products. We like that. Besides running two ventures, Blair recently completed an effort that I found rather interesting. He talked to 300 plus industrial designers across US and Europe, and in doing so gathered some rather interesting data. And I want to talk with him about exactly that. I guess we can call it State of the Union for ID in 2025. Blair Hasty, welcome to Design Office Hours.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's great to be here.
I want to start with, you talked to 300 designers. Before we go there, what made you do that?
That is I think the question I probably get the most. It was, as you kind of mentioned at the top of the podcast here, I was in the process of launching Crafted By, my agency, earlier this year. And I think like most industrial designers, I would venture to say almost all, we tend to get absorbed in the work a lot of times and
Right.
lose track of this networking component that we know that we should be doing. So I knew that I needed to get back into that and start growing my network. So I think like a lot of us, I also tended to hyper focus a little too much on that goal and went a little overboard. So when I said I wanted to meet with designers and grow my network, I really meant it. And so I started doing it in person. I started doing it online. I started having meetings and calls and podcasts and anything and everything, just any way I could talk to other designers. But it's given me some tremendous insights, which I'm more than happy to share with you here today.
Right. Was there a moment you felt disconnected from the design world or design industry yourself?
Oh gosh. I think, yes. I want to say we all probably feel disconnected from it at some point, most likely. Or maybe it's not as connected as we would like to be.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I feel like the design industry is, it can be brutal and it can also be cyclical. And depending on which part you're in, especially there's always going to be ups and downs. And maybe you're not at where you want to be in your career, or you're not where you want to be at your specific job. But there's always times when you feel like, oh, I should be here, should be doing this, should be doing something more creative or more impactful, or um, I almost guarantee that we all go through that phase of questioning the amount of stuff that we're putting in landfills. So that certainly is something that I think you kind of hit that disconnect at some point as well.
Yeah. Oh, certainly the landfill question. I think that's the
Mhm.
question first as a student and then as a, I don't know, junior, senior, whatever, every stage in your
I
career,
think
you
so.
have a different angle to it. With your career and the various stages you went through, right? Different companies,
Mhm.
different formats. How did you, and now knowing all this, having talked to all these people,
Mhm.
how do you think the design industry has changed, maybe since you started, and maybe not just on the surface, but also emotionally, culturally? I mean, we went through some big shifts, I think,
Oh,
not
absolutely.
just design as a world, COVID and whatnot.
Mhm. Yeah, oh, yeah. So obviously, COVID had a huge impact, and it's an impact we are still reeling from today.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people kind of undercut that delayed impact. Kind of. yeah, not really understanding the larger uh, economic impact that it's had. Going from COVID into supply chain issues, which then led to inflation
Mm,
issues, and now we're dealing with other inflationary and supply chain concerns globally that are disrupting things. So, yeah, I think in terms of how has it changed throughout my career, I think it's gotten more competitive. For one, I think there is,
right,
um,
right.
and we can certainly expound on this a little later. But I believe a big component to that is just the shift in the nature of design education from and I think it's kind of moved into this arena where they're uh, the schools essentially have realized that they are a business and that the customer is the student, and their goal is to get as many in the door and keep them there and get them out as possible, which is awesome that we are able to have this many people in the field, but it just creates more and more competition. And I think that's suppressing long-term wage growth. It's making it harder to find positions for a lot of those people coming into the market. So I think that's probably one of the largest ones, in my opinion. Um,
Mm, mm,
and we can certainly talk about other longer term trends and design trends and things like that. But I think as far as the industry goes, that's probably one of the biggest ones that I've seen, and one that I think is top of mind for not just junior designers, but every designer right now. And going kind of speaking to the 300 plus that I talked to. Uh, I've talked to everything from students right out of school all the way to VPs who have recently been let go from their positions. Uh,
mm, mm,
and I think both of those things that we just mentioned are complicating issues and causing a lot of people to question the validity of the industry, where it's going, the long term viability of their careers. That's pretty tough to be, you know, 20, 30 plus years into your career at a highest level you could pretty much achieve, and then
right.
all of a sudden be knocked back to zero.
Right, right. Well, I think the design school thing that you just mentioned is interesting. The amount of designers that are being sort of released into the
Yeah.
field, right? I think when I remember when I studied the school I studied in Germany was the last school that was sort of allowed to be or was allowed to you know uh, receive the ability to train designers because I think
Mm,
Germany had like 40 plus design schools, not the biggest country, right?
yeah.
And sort of was like, oh, it's too many. What's unique about it? And then they found an angle, and the school or that course came to be. But yeah,
Mm,
that is true. On the other hand, I also I think the world needs more designers,
yeah.
and I think it points a little bit to what you're just the whole body of work. The world needs more designers, but the world needs different designers. There's
Mm,
more work than ever, or more room than ever to apply design thinking, but I think it's different fields, it's different circumstances, and I'm not sure if industrial designers are always so well positioned to sort of grow into other categories, right? But we'll
well,
eventually get there. Go for it.
I think that it's not just we're not positioned, but we're also it becomes a very fundamental part of our identity.
Hmm.
And I think that's what also a lot of designers struggle with is, and why a lot of the in-person gatherings that I put together have done so well is because it's the people, not just the people that are in the field, but the people who are adjacent or who studied but haven't have been knocked out or haven't quite broken back into the actual industrial design again, but they still
Hmm.
identify as industrial designers. We all
Yeah.
want to fundamentally think of ourselves as industrial designers, and that's what I think a lot of us are struggling with is like, well, I want to get back to that core thing, that thing that I thought that I loved and I value. And I think there's also a struggle that a lot of senior leaders are kind of going through as well, because they hit this point in their career where in order to keep progressing and growing and uh, they're pushed into leadership or some kind of role that is no longer really design. And so they struggle with this identity crisis. So I think a little bit of, well, what am I now? Am I like, if I'm not doing design so much, like, I think there's a fair number of them out there, and that are just hitting that wall, thinking, my values should be in doing the work rather than leading teams or sitting in meetings all day long, or they just miss the work. And I think that's a big, it's something that's necessary for sure, but it's a struggle that I think a lot of people have to go through.
Yeah, I think if you're a manager and you miss the work, you maybe shouldn't have become a manager. Or
Well,
you miss it for the healthy amount, but
yeah,
ultimately your work has changed, right? It's the sort of, I mentioned,
it
you
is.
touched a bit on the transformation aspect. When you start managing or choose to become a people's leader, I think that's the healthiest way. You go
Mhm.
into it with the intention, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Sort of the first, I think, bigger kind of fork in the road where you have to where you have to transform yourself from this hands-on designer role into something managing. But you're right. I've also observed quite some design leaders, managers who were sort of pushed in this role, or it was the only way to progress in their career. But
Yeah.
by doing so, they sort of, well, okay, this is kind of, I don't really want that. And some of them become actually real good managers because they're really efficient, and some others just not. But
Yeah.
so would you say that, I mean, would you say that design is in a crisis, or is it the people that are in a crisis?
Um, I think we're just going through a larger crisis as a whole. I don't think design is necessarily in crisis. I think you're right. Design thinking is something that I've had the same kind of thought as you. I think every part of the business could benefit from that kind of creative process and outside the box approach to problem solving. I think too often other parts of the business get too absorbed in following procedure and
Mm,
metrics and things that are prescribed to them, rather than trying to think of new creative ways of solving the same problems. As far as the design industry, are we in a crisis? Yes and no. Again, I think we're going through a global financial crisis right now. Whether what label you want to put on that, I don't know, but it's very apparent at this point that things have dipped. Now, the reason that I say that, design is and isn't going through that crisis is design is, in most cases, the only forward-looking component of most companies. When you really consider, what the makeup of an average company, uh, most of the people are dedicated towards getting product out the door and making an impact on a daily or quarterly basis, because that's generally the focus, especially of larger businesses. Is we have to hit our quarterly numbers, uh, and I think when uh, when strife comes along, when there's an impact in the larger market, it's easier to say as a leader, as a company leader, well, we can get rid of the people that are thinking 1, 5, 10 years down the road, but I need those people that are making me money today to be here to continue to hit our numbers as best we can. I can't get rid of my accountants or my salespeople or the logistics people, but those design guys, those ones that are sitting over there just dreaming up the next year's solutions, yeah, I can push that off for a little bit longer. And especially when you know that it's happening industry wide, if you know that everybody's doing it at the same time, well, then that gives you some solace as a leader to say, well, we're not going to be caught off guard by, our competitors over here, XYZ company, all of a sudden skipping ahead in the market because they've come up with some revolutionary new design, because they're probably laying off their design department too. We're all making
right,
cuts right now. And that's
right,
pretty much an understood, like that's what's going to happen. So I think
right.
that's why a lot of designers are going through this at the moment.
Yeah, I think there was a time in maybe 2 years ago, just after COVID. Weirdly enough, at the tail end of COVID, there was so much money being pumped into all kinds of things. I was living in New York at
Mhm.
that time with Peloton, which is one of those COVID weirdo
Oh, yeah,
relics,
yeah, yeah.
right? But I mean, the headhunters were just knocking on your door every day because there was so much money being pumped into all kinds of, well, weird or not so weird business ideas and ventures,
Mm.
right? And a lot of them, surprisingly, had hardware components. So I think there
Mm.
was a bit of a high moment for industrial designers. And I remember people around me, they were just, they were just sort of glorified and had this like, you could feel this. So I'm in demand. Finally, I'm in demand as an industrial designer. And yeah, I thought, I
Yeah.
too, it was just, again, the headhunters were coming and coming. It was like, want to go here, want to do this. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. But I think similar like you, I had a feeling at the back, like, wait, money in hardware, right, in CapEx usually doesn't move that fast. So I think when
Mm.
you're a little bit sensitive to these or have exposure or experience with these, with the money side of things, I guess working in management helps you. You're
Mm.
like, I was like, this has a bitter taste somehow. And guess what? That fizzled out rather quickly, right? Come
Yeah.
2022, no, 23, I believe.
Yeah.
This all went bust, and I think a lot of IDs people sort of were on the streets more than before. And I
Mm.
think the other part you said that it's right to sort of they lay their design team off, then they do the same or reduce it,
Yeah.
and it's these like weird reverse network effects. And I also would think design at this point isn't just as much as important. You said it's a forward-looking. I think that's right. It's the
Yeah.
forward-looking function,
Mm.
but it has to be recognized as such. So
Yeah.
I guess it's the old struggle that we're always fighting.
Well,
Um,
I think there's a
yeah.
couple more components that kind of, in my mind, several that have kind of factored into this as well. It's not just a uh, global downturn necessarily. It just, I think that's why a lot of people are struggling right now to find the answer, because it's not a simple, it's not a housing crisis. It's not a dot-com bubble burst.
Mm,
Those were easy because you could point to one thing and say that's why. And I think everybody's looking for that one why, but we just happen to be living in this weird convergence era of the pandemic, feeling the after effects of that. I think AI is obviously having a big impact. Now, I don't think it is in the same sense that probably most people would think right off the top of their head, which is I don't think it's necessarily taking jobs yet, in any large capacity. Certainly not design jobs. If anything, it's just making us more effective. But every company in the world right now is trying to shove AI into every corner of their business they possibly can. And it is the most in demand and one of the highest price items to now put into a company. So where do you think that money's coming from? That those budgets have
mm,
to get
mm,
stolen from something else. So I think that's one of them. There has been I think you and I have kind of talked before about the rising just designer class in Asia. I think that's been a huge influence as well. I think there's a lot of amazing designers coming into their careers over there, and it's just kind of pulling some of the air out of the room in the West. Not that that's a massive deflationary concern in our industry. But I think it is having somewhat of an impact. And that's part of what we're feeling as well. And then the last one was just, and I can't speak to, for you and your experience, but at least here in the United States, for sure, the question I like to pose to people is, when was the last time you went holiday shopping or birthday shopping for somebody and it was easy? When was the last time
mm.
you didn't struggle to think of something to buy for somebody? Because it's almost impossible for me, and most of my relatives. And I've been telling people for years, go buy experiences. I don't need any more stuff because I've got so many little, widgets and chargers and devices. Not that I'm like super well off. I'm probably fairly average, but I mean, honestly, a lot of it's also just boiled down to this experience has become the center of our world. It's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so we're so ingrained in that all day, every day that you just don't have as much time. And honestly, this little device is, took over for a plethora of other devices that we used to
Yeah.
purchase when we were, young. So, you know, in the early 2000s, you would have gone out and maybe bought somebody a digital camera for their birthday, or a recorder, or whatever, 100 other
Yeah.
things. Now it's all in one device. I don't need all
Yeah.
that other stuff. So I
Yeah.
think we're kind of
Yeah.
struggling with this. Do we need more stuff? Kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think that's all kind of like I said, it's just sort of coming together at the same time and creating this perfect storm of, well, how much do we really need industrial design right this moment? So I think it's
Yeah.
maybe up to us to reinvent that and come up with,
Yeah.
like you said, like maybe it's we start to move out into other parts of the business and really apply that value that we bring to the way that you really you can do the business part of things, or the
Right.
project management side of things, or other
Right.
aspects of the
Right.
business.
Right. Right. Which is something we see designers sometimes moving in, but it's rather rare, right? To mention project
Mm.
management. It's often engineers go in there, okay, depending on the industry, the company, not a bad thing.
Hmm.
But designers rarely sort of go there. I could also imagine it's because they simply don't want, right? You said we're so linked to this identity of what it means to be a designer.
Yeah.
Bring it back to the 300, not 300 Spartans. It's constantly in my head. 300 people you talked about. Or
Oh
maybe the
yeah.
Spartans.
Yeah.
What's the most honest thing designers have told you in these conversations? Something that no one posts about online,
Ooh, most honest. I think it's just that, probably the
or
struggle.
sentiment. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think most people still want to keep that, that positive, buoyant attitude online, and not really appear as though they're struggling, or that they're having, an identity crisis, or
Yeah.
they're not happy with where they are. That's probably, you know I would say that's probably on up there, is a lot of designers just either aren't happy with the level of products they're designing, or the team they're on, the company they're in, where their company's at or where it's going. And I talked to some great designers who I was like really excited about talking with, and they were at great companies, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you got a dream job, and then you get on the phone with them and they're just like, oh yeah, it was a rough day. I guess I had to come up with some more ideas for that thing. And yeah, I guess it's fine. But,
Yeah.
you know, the,
Yeah.
I think a lot of that also comes back to that um, there's there's this there's definitely a lot of through lines within the design community. Uh, and once you start talking to enough industrial designers, you start to hear the same things over and over. First of
Uh-huh.
all, the origin story, always the same. Everybody kind of went through the same process to find industrial design, almost. There's a few exceptions. But we all tend to be the same general personality ish. Most are introverts. The few that aren't are just the lucky ones that are able to learn how to work themselves out of that box. It's
Right.
not that they're not. It's just that they figured out, hey, this is more valuable if I do this. If I
Yeah.
start a podcast, if I start a networking group or whatever it is, or if I start putting myself out there more. Uh, and so I think that's a big uh, a big tell for um, where we are as an industry. And the main reason that I started to get outside of just talking directly to people when I started doing this networking venture, because I eventually started what's now the Industrial Designers International Group, IDI, on
Right.
LinkedIn,
We'll
and
get
it's
there.
grown to other
We'll get there.
platforms.
All right.
But it's yeah, it's I feel like we're we don't tend to get outside of that shell enough, and I know that if they're if that's the way they act with me, or in these kind of arenas and communities, then they're definitely not able to break outside of it when they're
Right.
in their day-to-day operations. And that's what I'm trying to
Right.
really encourage, is getting outside of that comfort zone a little bit and communicating more openly.
Do you think that, I think you described it earlier as an isolation epidemic. Why do you think, why do you
I
think
do. I
designers,
hundred.
why do you think
It's.
designers feel so alone right now? Or what's,
I don't think it's right now. I don't think
yeah,
that's. I think that's. I mean, there's certainly, again, because of all the other stuff that we mentioned.
yeah,
Sure,
yeah,
there's a lot more that have been impacted by things. But even in the best of times, it's a concern for for the same reason I just mentioned. We are the fundamentally, most of us are built as the bury our nose in the computer or the sketchbook, and we got into this to create. And
mm,
whether you
mm,
like it or
mm,
not, you are a designer for that very reason. You were born a designer. You were just honed and sharpened into the instrument you are. You were not created into a designer. You have
mm,
this natural desire to want to produce and create
mm,
interesting, novel ideas that get them out of your own head into the world. And I think that's immensely valuable. Again, I think it's fundamental to who we are. So, uh, I, I, I think, but it tends to be catch 22 a lot of times, I guess, where we want to interact with, solve problems for other people. But in the process, we tend to get isolated in our own work and just, you know, nose to the grindstone and forget
yeah,
about doing like those networking things. And then also, because of all the other economic issues, teams are getting smaller and you have a lot
right,
of people working, in small isolated teams or working for themselves these days. Myself, I would believe, I know you tend to work a lot on your own. So it's becoming more and more prevalent. I think the ability that COVID gave us to prove that working remotely was an option is also
mm, mm.
kind of leading to a lot of that as well.
I would think so. Yeah, I think that emotional fallout from COVID is something definitely. I think I would agree, and I think there is. I'm very fascinated in general the setup of companies and where design is. Right, you can just almost always tell by figuring out where design sits in the org chart and how the
Mm,
organization organizes itself with design or without or around it or not. How effective design is, right? And there was obviously the sort of classic design team, right? Sits behind closed doors, the all creatives, the huddling together. And, as much as I think that this is a format of the past, although that sounds more harsh than it's supposed to be, because I think it depends what type of company you are and what product you're developing and what types of industry you're in, right? You mentioned
mm,
forward looking, but I think this sort of model of like, oh, this is the design group, it sits over there, always provided a community for the creatives. And I think why I think this was, well, important or had an impact is the creatives in a company, you're always the salmon that jumps up the river, right? Everything is usually meant to go rather one
mm,
way, and you're the one sort of like, no, I think it should be this way. So you're always working against the grain somehow, which
mm,
is part of your job, right? If you do the other way around, you're not pushing the kind of boundaries or trying to.
mm,
But in order to do so, that individual needed their creative community, the people to talk to fragile ideas, to talk these weirdo things, these
mm,
very other thoughts that you can't talk with a financial controller. So I think there's an emotional and community sort of company internal community impact. And then there was a time when design teams, at least what I witnessed, moved out of these like communities, right? The design team group and sort of dispersed themselves into engineering teams or you started forming these cross-functional teams and they sit together and they develop, and on paper that works all quite well. And I also think it works in practice quite well, but I think you cannot you have to organize it differently from how you did before. You cannot just co-locate these people and say, okay, guys, work together on the product now. That
mm,
works for the now product, but the designers will stop thinking about the future because they're being now in this cross-functional team sucked into every now problem, right? The near and
mm,
far, there's no airtime. There is also no community to explore concepts, right? So
mm,
my idea was always, if you do this, make sure you have a mechanism to bring these people back together and say, no, we're having a week sprints or we're having once or twice a week, go and work, sit where the other designers, they meet there and talk to things you can't talk with your engineering team. So I don't think there's good or bad. It's just if you decide to do it this way, you have to implement certain processes and mechanisms to keep that creative
That's
thing flowing.
that's a great point. And honestly, one that I haven't really thought of in a little while, but I love the way you're kind of strategizing that or thinking around that is, and it kind of alludes back to what we were talking about before, as far as bringing design thinking into the rest of the organization. I think that organizations are in some ways fundamentally misorganized or miscategorized. We tend to put functions together or product teams together versus, should we start to also look at it as forward thinking versus now thinking? So
Yeah,
like this team is forward thinking, and maybe that's a temporary arrangement. Like, oh, we formulate this team for X amount of percent of the year, so just to work on forward thinking versus now thinking. But yeah, could you literally reorganize a company around the percentage? And that's what I think is missing from a lot of organizations, is this idea of like, what percentage of our total output are we dedicating towards down the road innovative thinking versus now thinking? We got to get this out the road, out
yeah,
there, and
right.
keep it moving.
Yeah. Yeah. You have that in a few companies, right? They have their future forward teams in this. But
Yeah.
what I find interesting there is how much these teams have to, especially when you work in technology, is that sort of need a lot of runway, right? And it's a long-term chess game. If you don't provide that, or if you're not unable to come up with something that's relevant in 5 years, it's a mistake hard to correct. But what I found, observed and found interesting here, how often these sort of, well, yeah, maybe skunk work teams and being able to operate differently because you don't have to prove immediately a business case. Um, how much they struggle to just stay in that future forward space, right? And not being sucked into like, oh, you guys do it differently, you do it faster. Can you help us to launch products faster? Like,
Mm,
the product development process that you run in order to launch a product is designed a certain way because you have to take care of a few things, right? So there's always this I think power dynamic of like, yeah, we want to do it like this guy. They
mm,
seem to have not as many checks and balances. They just do things. Yeah, but they're also trying to figure out the future. They're not supposed to launch the product tomorrow.
yeah.
So I've seen enough business leaders constantly like, you know, craving to do it like these guys and conveniently ignoring what needs to be done actually to launch a product.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's go a little bit into what's eventually emerging, right, from this interview. I don't know if you call it interview rounds, but this massive networking that you have done.
Yeah.
You said earlier, we mentioned AI, we mentioned craft, we mentioned identity. I think you said to me maybe in a previous call something on if you're still clinging to craft, right, you're sort of falling behind. And I think that's provocative. And we just talked a little bit about the sort of thinking and eventually changing nature. But if you could elaborate a little bit on this, because you also
Oh,
said, heads down into the sketchbook, but the world
yeah, yeah.
around you is somewhat changing. So let's unpack this a little bit.
Yeah. So maybe you can give me a little bit more, you kind of refresh my memory, because I think vaguely remember us talking about but yeah, we kind of went fairly deep on a few of these conversations.
Right,
So
right, right.
yeah, my brain
Yeah,
tends to
so
wander.
it was it should, the sort of like, if you're still, thinking that, I mean, I never thought you're a designer because you do CAD, but
Mm,
if you're still sort of
ah,
clinging to this, oh, this is what I'm doing, I'm not doing anything else, it's to get, if you're still a maker, right? Maybe that's
mhm,
some even more provocative term.
yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being a maker. It just depends the world you're in.
Mm.
Does it need makers or does it need something else now?
I still think it needs, crafts makers, in the sense that we craft ideas and we come
Hmm.
up with the unique solutions to problems. I think we're maybe we were going down that rabbit hole of, how does AI affect the craft of design? So
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, right.
obviously it's going to start to take over things like, image generation, rendering, maybe even sketching. uh, I think it frees us up potentially to get back to the nature of what we honestly should be doing. And I can't even tell you how many students I've talked to who aren't focusing on talking to people. That is the biggest issue I see with
That's
design
right.
education right now. I mean, I literally talked to 7 students, 7 or 8 or so today. Not a single one of them had talked to anybody outside of their immediate studio about the projects that they were halfway through. So in my mind, what do you like? What is the point? What are you doing? Because if you think your job down the road is going to be creating renderings, then I hate to tell you that's no longer our job. It's not going to be very soon, because I can very quickly, and a lot of them are just doing the doodles and uploading it to AI and getting AI renderings and going, okay, I'm done with the project. I can go home now.
Right.
And what I'm trying to tell them is your work is not the image. It's not hell, it's not even as much the design, like, carving out the design part. It's trying to understand the people that you're designing for, understand their problems, figure out what their issues are, and what their life looks like, and try to get the real understanding of what their feedback is from the solutions that you ultimately come up with. I think a lot of us designers are also kind of scared of that. And honestly, I've been in that boat myself in the past. The old,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the, you know, if I'd asked my, and with Henry Ford, if I'd asked my customers what they'd wanted, they would have said a better horse, analogy of, well, I can't ask the people what they want because they don't know yet. I have to tell them. And you're right. But I feel like it's our job now to go out, paint the picture of what their life looks like. What are their needs? What are their wants? Not every possible thing. We don't need to understand. You can't go out and ask them specifically, well, what would you want in this product and how much would you pay for it? You will always get the wrong answer. So you can't come at it directly. You kind of have to come at it from the side and ask questions that, again, give you like the broad strokes of like, oh, I get it. This is how they do their shopping. This is how they use their products currently. This is what's in their life, and what's missing from their life. Now that I understand those missing components, I can go and come up with creative solutions that solve for that, and then go back to them and ask, are these the right solutions? So you're kind of bracketing that discovery and imagination period on either end with some level of information gathering. But it's that human connection that I think
Right.
we've been steering away from as designers, as a profession, for too long. And now it's come to the point where that is the only thing left. We,
Right.
AI will strip away all the other components soon. So your main job will be to understand the human component of the design and the process.
Mm. Do you think, so if AI is the sort of freedom, right? A freedom of, like you said, freedom of doing renders and not being stuck in executional work. And some people may debate and say, yeah, but that's part of it, like developing as
Yeah.
you're, designing as you're developing and iterating. That's fine, but there's nuances for this conversation. If AI is the freedom, why are so many designers terrified of it? What do you think?
That is a good question. I think they're just just like any change. They're fundamentally scared for their role. That's what they know their role to
Mm,
be.
right,
Um,
right,
and honestly, that's what most of them, or not most, I won't say most. That's what a good percentage of designers, that's what they love, is the craft, is the
right,
thing that I want. Like, I've talked to so many designers who just think that is design, and that's all it ever will be, is the sketching or the CAD. And you have kind of both camps. Usually, people kind of fall into one or the other. They either love the early hand development phase, or they're more CAD heavy. But once they get into their sweet spot, into their zone, and it is a hyper focused zone. That's all it is. That's just
right,
your
right.
ability to. That's where you are most comfortable getting the ideas out of your head, and that's what I said earlier. Like you are going to find a way to get those ideas out of your head one way or the other, and I feel like the big component of that is you found that early on in life, and it became your outlet, that easy release for, oh, I got to get this out somehow. Oh,
Mhm.
that's it. I can do this. And this is great because I'm great at it. I think what you're going to see is a lot of designers having to rediscover themselves and realize that there's other ways to get those things out of your head. And it doesn't necessarily have to be those ideas. I think we almost all have some level of creative outlet outside of our work, because even the work itself isn't enough. And especially, like you said, once you get up into leadership, it's almost a necessity. You will have, uh, artists, painters, or I like to cook. I love the creativity that comes along with being able to just create a whole new thing from scratch every night. And I can play around with the idea or, it could be building crafts or models or furniture in your wood shop or whatever it is, but you're going to probably need to find something, or it could just be, drawing pretty birds that you see outside. But
Yeah.
I think a lot of us, that's the reason.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think the AI, I believe most of the executional work, right? What we do, you're sitting in Photoshop, CAD, all of this sort of stuff. Now a certain type of people loves to put their headphones on and just is gone for 3 hours doing and enjoys that.
Yeah,
I
I love
think
it.
that stuff. I think that stuff will be mainly more and more increasingly automated, right? I think the
Mhm,
future tools, in whatever form and shape they may arrive, will just require less precise and less human specific input, right? It's more, and we see that right now on a sort of more playful basis. Like my mom knows how to check emails. But my mom could create a image through a chat prompt. Now,
mhm,
you and me and others in our industry have gotten used that, okay, this is around now, but I have to, remind myself on this sometimes, like what this actually means, right?
mhm,
How fundamental of a shift that is from just a pure interface standpoint. Because if I give my mom Photoshop and say, okay, go have a go, create me something, she's like, what? Let's look at all these icons. It's terrible.
yeah.
Just from an interface and how do I approach something and being able to get something out of it. I think something like a chat interface that gives you almost, not everything, but a lot back, right?
Mhm,
Images, text, whatever, spreadsheets is a dramatic shift in how we interact with software, with systems. And I think design systems will be no different to that, right? It will be that threshold of operating design systems will be dramatically lowered. The learning curve will be cut out or flattened. Great.
mhm.
But I believe that also means that not necessarily designers have to operate these tools, because the tool in itself is loaded with Dieter Rams' spirit, right? Whatever you want to, right? So it has a lot of intelligence built in, and you can be the marketing person that has a product idea and wants to have a go at it. And I
Mhm.
think there is call it democratizing aspect to it. I think it's just what these tools will enable. And
Well, I do
I
think
think,
that you're
yeah,
I think you're right in a sense, but then you could also make the argument that the product designer could be doing the marketing, or that the
totally,
CEO could be doing
totally,
the product design. So I do
exactly,
think I don't look at it like a replacement. I look at it like a it's just a better tool. It's gonna shortcut the process. It's gonna allow us. The way I've always kind of spoken about it is like, let's just say I'm gonna write a very detailed email to somebody. I would have, normally I would have budgeted, previously a few years ago, maybe I budgeted half an hour. Like, I'm going to really sit down, like, I'm going to make sure that every line in this is perfect. Well, I would have written that thing probably once, maybe, gone through it, rewritten it
mm, mm,
another
mm,
couple
mm.
times. Well, now I can do that same cycle 30 or 50 or 60 times in the same amount of time. So it's not that I'm shortening the amount of time necessarily. It's that I'm able to get a lot more precision because I take that first draft and jump it into an LLM somewhere and get it to give me some suggestions and modifications. And then I go back and go, I don't like the way you did this, but how about try this now? Or can you give me some versions? Try 30 different versions of this sentence. And because I don't like the way you phrased that. So it's just a way for us to iterate faster, not that it's just going to make everything it shouldn't make things easier. And that's what I see a lot of students falling, the trap I see them falling into is, oh, I don't have to do CAD. I don't know need to know how to do Photoshop. I can just dump it into, Mid-Journey or, some other AI tool and say, hey, give me this product rendering. And it spits out something that's mostly correct, or, kind of looks correct until you start to actually, dissect it. But the problem they have right now is they're doing it without any real world constraints. And
Any
so
checks and
they're just
balances.
saying,
Yeah.
yeah, just give me an
Yeah.
image of a design. And then without having to concern themselves, like, well, is that the
Yeah.
right, can that be manufactured? Is it the right price? Is it going to solve
Yeah.
for all the, the things we needed
Yeah.
to solve for it?
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's right. I think it will be interesting. I agree. At least for now, the tools will have to speed up,
Yeah.
which is also combining tasks into, the time of 2 tasks into the time of 1 task, right? So it's kind of the pre-step for like, well, at the end of the fiscal year, I don't need this 1 additional headcount because I get the same amount of productivity. So this is where it starts. But yeah, I would think they help to increase and speed up. I mean, it's already incredible what a individual can accelerate by just having access to the free version of ChatGPT, right? In your life, in your job or not. So it's already there a little bit. I think you mentioned something earlier about talking, right? So if communication is the new craft, did you come across somebody in your talks who does it right?
I don't want to call it anybody specifically,
No,
but yes, I've definitely,
abstract the example.
There's definitely some that do it right and a lot that do it wrong. Clearly the more senior they tend to be, obviously the more crafty they're going to be at and more eloquent they tend to be. But not always. It is interesting. And to be honest, it was, I think a lot of people are under the false pretense that, it's just your skill set that moves you up higher. Almost all the time, it's right place, right time. It's just luck. Not to say that these people are not also talented, but for every talented person that does climb the ladder in corporate, there's 1,000 other ones that didn't get that opportunity, who are stuck in an IC role or out on their own doing something else. So I hope that there's enough of them out there that are appreciative of that luck that they got. But those tend to be the ones that are the better, more thoughtful speakers.
Yeah.
But overall, we're not. It's a skill, and I 100% believe them. And one of the things I tell all the young designers and students is, if I could give you one piece of advice, it would be go out and network, go talk to people. And even if you just go out and talk to 10 random strangers today, just go do that, because the more you get comfortable with that, the better you're going to get at it. And it is, whether you're interviewing strangers for a project, or you're talking to people outside your team or your group within a corporation or a company, or you're trying to sell your ideas to the management or leadership team within your organization. Being more convincing and eloquent in your speech, and that almost always comes from just being more comfortable. That's what it is.
I agree. I think it's also something we have to make, we call the craft as like the makeup parts, but you're right. Communication is craft. Absolutely. And it's the most important, right? You have seen enough designers with excellent work, not going anywhere in a company or struggling outside on their own.
Oh yeah.
Because the communication isn't part of craft. And on the other hand, you have seen, I don't know, the most polished garbage pedaling all the way to the top because somebody's excellent at selling, and that should be acknowledged also as an achievement, right? It's
like 100%. Well, even more so, I think it's kind of like the hidden talent that nobody speaks about. It's
right.
You can quantify how good you are at CAD or at sketching. I can easily look at sketch and go, oh, they're really talented. It's a lot harder to say that person is talented at selling. And really that's all it is. And that's one, that's the skill that I would say is more not undervalued by the rest of the company. It absolutely isn't. Matter of fact, it's overvalued in a lot of, not maybe not overvalued, but it's properly valued in that the salespeople, for their level of technical capabilities, most of the time are far more compensated than all the other aspects of a lot of the company tends to be. Not that they're overcompensated, but they're compensated for that one extremely valuable skill. And I think designers look at that
Selling.
and
Yeah.
kind of scoff at it and go, why do they get,
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
that? But you just haven't understood the real value in selling and telling that story. And
Yeah.
that is the one thing that I've also heard, I would say over the last probably year to 2 years, is this idea of story. I don't know why it's been missing, or maybe it's just that it finally coalesced into this
Mm-hmm.
one word, but we've always known it and we've always done it. And
Right.
maybe I'm just now coming around to this idea, but it's everybody is now talking about this concept of how do you tell the story of the product? How
Right.
do you how do you
Right.
you know really sell it to your team, to your other teams, to the leadership? You need to be able to get buy-in across the board.
Right.
And I think
Right.
for too long, design kind of was in this boat of, well, we're kind of needed. And there's, I think, there was this, I would say, this Apple led renaissance, if you will, of industrial design for so long, where a lot of companies were just scrambling to integrate design into their products and into their ecosystem so much. And I think that period is started to wane. We're
Right.
coming
Right.
out of it. But I think a lot of, especially us older guys, got used to this idea that, well, yeah, it's just expected that design is needed. You
Yeah.
have to have it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We'll just sit back and wait for it to come to us.
Yeah.
And
Which I
I think
think
it's
is,
starting to happen less.
I think it's probably one of the big system shocks to the system that we got, that we're in the last, I don't know, 5 years, that, to your point, designers think they're needed. And I think we're realizing slowly and sort of
Yeah.
painfully realizing, maybe to ourselves first, that
Yeah.
without admitting it, we're actually not needed that
No.
much as we thought. This sort of feeling special. I think there are a few aspects, right? There is obviously this business reality that we're seeing, great mediocre products, right? And mediocre always depends on what's on the context and circumstances, what you're surrounded by. But I think we have this call it awakening of like, well, they're doing just fine without me. And then you have this technology moving in, right, where everybody can start creating images and whatnot and good looking stuff. And I think one of the big issues we have with AI is that everything this thing is producing, we're liking it. We're like, oh, this doesn't look, this is not bad, right? And that's where the scare part starts. Like, ooh. And I think you're right. We have thought for too long that we're it. We're hypercritical for the success of a company. I believe we're absolutely not. Unless you choose so, then yes, right? I think with Apple, it's like Apple design is brand. If the quality of curvature goes down and it's recognized somewhere, probably the stock market the stock price goes down. This is how intertwined it is. So hence I shy away of using design, Apple as an example. But I think, I think we have for too long thought that, we are very essential for the company's product success to be human centric, this and that. And
I,
I think,
I,
that's not all true.
I will say though, I do think that um, it's. I don't want to undervalue design either. I do think that
Oh yeah.
I think that it's not that it's not essential. It's just that it's up to us to sell that. And
Right.
that's the message I'm
That's
trying to
exactly right.
say is it's only essential if you're good at selling that to the other people you're working with, to the engineers, to the product managers, and to the everybody else, the leadership team. They have to understand why. And I think it's, again, going back to my other what I was saying a minute ago, I think we kind of got a little bit relaxed with this idea of like, oh, everybody just gets it now. We don't have to sell
Right.
it anymore.
Right. Right.
Instead
Right.
of
Right.
now, it's people are starting to kind of come back to us and say, well, why do we have to have this? So we just have to get back into a mode of really, illustrating that and say, well, it is important. And if you don't, here's what happens. Because if we're not leading the charge, somebody else will at some point, and that's when we lose market share.
That's right. Do you think in all of that, and coming back to younger people, right? We mentioned, I agree with you that the networking part, exact. I tell the same my students all the time, and the people I mentor, it's like, what's your state of networking? Oh, I haven't talked to anybody recently. I'm like, well,
Oh my
let's
God,
change
they're
that, right?
horrible. Ah,
My example, just meet 10 strangers, or it's a good way to usually start talking about how do you craft communication, how you design conversations, and networking. LinkedIn, I mean, if anything, LinkedIn is good for, it's reaching out to people and sort
100%.
of working this. And, as a student, I think a lot of people are usually inclined to talk to you and
Mhm.
say, yeah, sure, let's have a conversation. And then it's up to you. How do I make this 30 minutes of this person's time engaging, stimulating,
Absolutely.
and that is my design problem. That's what I'm
Mhm.
going to hone in. And it's a skill, it's a muscle. And sure, to some others, this comes easier, and to some others, this comes harder. You just have to figure out which side you are, and you have to work harder on this. But it is absolutely the critical part going forward. I would agree.
Well, I would say though also that, you know, one of the things that I've also noticed about the design community as a general rule, now there are some that break
Uh,
this, but we are empathy driven monsters. We wouldn't be good at what we do if we weren't. We want to help. We feel other people's emotions as if they were our own, and we want to help other people. It's just in the nature of most designers. I could probably count on one hand in all the conversations I've had. Actually, I don't even think I could name any of them. Anybody I've talked to that was rude or mean or just downright, short and just wanted to leave the conversation. Matter of fact, I typically will book the conversation for, 30, 45 minutes. Rarely do I have one that ends in under an hour. And I think my conversation was the exact same way. We rarely end in less time than what I actually booked for the conversation, just because so many designers, they're excited to talk to another designer because we kind of
right.
get it. We
Yeah.
communicate the
Yeah.
same way.
Yeah.
And I could go into a lot of the psychology on that, but I'll save that for another show. But the you know we're just we're very just kind, gentle souls who want to help other people. So I've always tell like young designers, just as long as you're honest and you don't ask for too much, to be very humble. Go into it and try to be very upfront with the ask. Like here's what I want. Here I'm going to structure this meeting, and I want to. I just want to talk to you, or I want to get feedback on my portfolio, or whatever it is. But try to keep it very short and sweet, and then just start asking people, "Hey, would you like to have a conversation?" You'd be amazed at how often it actually works. But you're going to have to probably send out a lot of invites. Maybe it maybe works 10 to 20% of the time, but
Right.
that
Yeah.
other 80 to 90%, who cares? You're never going to hear from them anyway. And it's not that they're being rude; they're just busy. It's I guarantee you, because I've had people follow up with me months later and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I've been meaning to get back to this. I just couldn't. I've had so much going on, but I'd
Yeah.
still love to meet with you."
Yeah. Yeah.
It's worth asking.
Yeah. We mentioned a few times design education, so maybe let's pivot there a little bit, sort of as kind of like
Absolutely.
looking towards, the next 10, 15, 20 years. But first, do you think that current design education, given where we are,
Mm.
all we talk, given what's emerging, right, on tools, AI, whatnot, do you think that current design education is sort of failing the current design
Oh,
generation? Current
that's a
current being
very
like students that are in there right now.
that is a very difficult, loaded question, obviously, because every design program's different. So I can only speak to the ones that I have
Yeah.
been, privy to, and worked with. I think in a lot of ways they haven't adapted, and it's not the program's fault necessarily. I think they're getting pressure from the administration at a lot of these organizations. Again, it's a business. It is 100% a business. So they've just started treating it like it is. And again, the student is the customer. It's not the business at the end of the road. It's the kid in the seat paying them today. So, these are 18, 19, 20 something year old kids who just, they know they like to draw. They love to create. They love to be, create awesome stuff, but they probably haven't really thought of all the financial ramifications of what they're going through and what they're asking for, to do. And so when you give them the power and the control and say, you get to tell me what you want to learn and how much you want to output. Well, a 19, 20-year-old is going to just naturally go, I don't want to do it today. I'm tired. I want to go party tonight. Like, that's their instincts. That's what they're wanting to do. I get it. But that's what we've done is we've given them the control and said, hey, here, you guys go run your own thing. I don't know. I absolutely don't have a solution in mind, although I have talked it through with quite a few people, because this is a known quantity, a known issue with almost every designer. We realize that it's a problem. How do we solve for it? I don't know, but I do think it's on the industry side. The school, they're not going to solve for it. So how do we as an industry start to put pressure back on them to say, hey, we can't, you got to, or, as an industry, start to just make people more aware of what we do and the complexities of the actual work, because a big problem is that there's just too many students a lot of the time. And that's because they're going out and selling this idea of the 10% of what we do as that's all that you're going to do when you get out is just make cool stuff all day long. It's just, you get to do this. Oh, it's so fun. And they see that and go, ooh, that is neat. I want to do that. They're, they don't show the competition that you're going to have to go, the struggle of, putting together your portfolio for the 100th time and emailing 300 people to, have all these conversations. And then once you get the job, getting into the real world and sitting through, 8 hours of meetings nonstop, and then having to actually do the work after that.
Well, in that sense, it's a successful sales pitch on the design schools. But I think it's right to analyze fascinating to analyze the dynamic that it has become such a business, right? Especially private design schools, such a business of like, that's the customer. And it goes back to an earlier point you said, right? The customer often doesn't know what they want. So I know it's not always the only input to us as students, but it's a very strong voice. And one or the other schools, of course, pride themselves of like, the student has a very strong voice. Fair enough, right? Does the student know what needs to be done to sustain in the next 10, 15 years? Probably not. To some extent, that's okay. That's where we go in our industry. I found myself in the last 2 years fairly frequently with higher ed educators around the table talking, and these folks are sort of openly questioning, I don't know what the value is, what we're doing here in the next 5 years. So there's definitely there's definitely a knowing of, okay, this is heading towards a point. But I think schools, as well as maybe the industry, or the industry may be a little bit better, but schools, they don't really know what to prepare for, right? Or how to put this into a program that is as attractive as, I don't know, what they're selling right now to parents to get, I don't know, 150,000 plus US dollar tuition fee. I believe the tuition fee model is something that's failing anyway. But so I believe we're seeing the tail end of this model of education and financing it. And so it will be interesting to watch that space. But I do think it's a tough space to be in right now, because I think there's this transition phase and big scrutinizing of things. What would you, I don't know, give me your 3 top things. What would, if you would to design a design program?
Oh, to design a design program?
High level altitude themes you would teach. You would put in there.
I think we've already touched on most of them. Networking, and just
communication.
Communication. Absolutely. Business education. They are not getting
Good point.
Most of the
Good point.
time. Again, that I can't speak to all design schools, but my God, I wish that they could understand how the rest of the business works and what the value is that design brings. Again, it's they're still being taught this idea that design is a given. It's a have to have, not a nice to have, and that you have to go out and sell that. Those two, I think, are probably going to be, I would say, probably my top two for for design students is be able to communicate. Be able to go out and network and talk to other people, talk to people in the field, and talk to people internally and sell your ideas.
Hmm.
Maybe those are two different things, like communication and storytelling. And then the third, maybe being the business education, because I was under the false impression for far too long of that, of this, if you build it, they will come mentality of product development. And that is absolutely not the case. And maybe it was at some point uh, in the world, but it is not today.
Right.
Marketing has a huge amount of control over whether or not your product has any traction in most cases, and I don't think that we're taught anything about that. Much less, I would love to see a lot more compatibility or between industrial design and other uh, industries or other disciplines,
Functions. Yeah. Yeah.
particularly specifically, and even when it is, it's going to be the obvious ones, which I have, like I worked with Georgia Tech a number of years ago. We sponsored several projects with them where I ran those projects, and they were co-sponsored with the industrial design program and the mechanical engineering program. And so they had students from both on the project the entire time, which was awesome. They got to work together and actually see this is how you will function in the real world. But that's about as far as I've seen it taken in most places. So I would love to see that, stretch out to other fields. Like, why not marketing? Why are we not being taught the value of how you can work and reach out to those people and understand like what they do, and so they can understand what we do and how to bring value to each other's work,
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
they're not. And I think you and I kind of briefly touched on this point a while ago, where I know in my career within a lot of corporate environments, you tend to be almost somewhat isolated on the product development side of the house. So we work and we toil for months or sometimes years on end and perfect this design and this thing, and then there's just this invisible wall that we just sort of toss it over and go, okay, well that's done. On to the next. Somebody's going to take care of it from here on out. I don't even know who that is or what they do, but it will get done. Well,
Yeah.
that other
Yeah.
part is super valuable and important, but we're not
Yeah.
being taught that. We're not teaching the kids. We're not even being shown that as professionals. And I think it's up to us as professionals to start reaching out and start making those connections. Again, that's part of the selling the value of design, is not just selling it up the chain, but going out and talking to
Yeah.
these other
Laterally.
departments and saying,
Laterally. Yeah.
yes, yeah,
That's right.
definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. Cross-functional, or just the nature of the design as a team sport and not between other designers, but people that are non-designers, right? How to
Uh,
teach that in university, to what extent, that has to be figured out. It's not as easy. Same as business, right? It will always be, or likely in a nutshell, sort of controlled environment. But it's about the awareness, the right amount of awareness you need when you get into the door.
uh,
And I think we touched on this earlier. Skills and the importance of skills when I talk to people about their portfolio, right? All they're concerned is this, is the portfolio, right? The skills and all that. Often
yeah,
it's because in the past, or well, I guess still to some extent, the skill level, sort of the executional skill level that you bring, opens that door, because you're not getting in as a senior designer understanding excellently business. That will come once you're on the job, right?
uh,
You're in there because you could sketch, you can execute, you can help, you can be the left hand, the right hand, you can run point on small projects, right? That's all that's just what's needed to get in. As this starts to kind of, well, fall away, crumble, being automated, right? Of course, I mean,
yeah,
we see that crisis right now unfolding. very well documented in the United States, of college graduates sort of, there's a crisis, right? People
Yep.
aren't finding the jobs anymore because these low-level entry, not low-level, I should correct myself before I get a lot of heat. These entry jobs, the complexity of the work that's being done
Mhm.
can be taken up by something else, and I think that's where the real crisis. So I agree. Sharpening that
Well,
other blade, I think
yep.
is very
And
important.
I think which I guess I did kind of touch on this, but I do want to make a big point of the storytelling aspect, because I haven't
Right.
really explained that from a student perspective, I guess, as much. But that's one of the things that I can't even tell you how many students I've had to tell. And when I ask them, what is your function? When you get out of this environment, when you get into the real world, what are you going to be doing? And it's like a deer in headlights. They just freeze up like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So they're not being really taught the realities of the world outside of that environment. They're just being told, all right, do this, this, and this, and then I'll give you a grade. Now do this, this, this. So this idea that your portfolio, like I 100% agree with you. I think they're still focused on results that aren't going to be as important, especially in a few years. And that is like how polished the image is at the back of their portfolio or at the end of their project. But that's still, it's very valuable, certainly important, but every single professional I talk to says when they look at a portfolio, what they're looking for is how you think. I
Right.
need to see
Right.
that there's, the wheels are turning up there, not how good your rendering ability is. I can
Right.
teach anybody how to render, fairly well within a short period of time. I cannot teach you how to think. That
Yep.
is going
That's
to
exactly
be
right.
far
That's exactly right.
too
Yep. Yep.
it's very important
Yep.
as a skill set, and to illustrate that, put it onto the page. Like I would rather see less polished final work, but see the process and see, oh, you talked to the user, you understood their needs, you translated that into these designs, you tested the designs, and then you changed it, and here's your final thing. It's not the best rendering in the world, but you went through and you showed me all that, and you got to a solution that I think will
Yeah.
probably actually sell.
Yep, that's right. It's pretty much what I would teach my students. It's like, show me how you think, show me how you pivot, show me how
Yeah.
you make decisions, right? Even in that controlled environment that a university class is, there you can show glimpses of that. In fact, you're doing all this just on a smaller scale. But show me how you think, how you solve crisis, what you do when things are not going as
You,
planned, right? And I
that
think
kind of
that's
gives me an idea. I think you just hit on a really valuable lesson that maybe we should figure out a way to formalize this, but in every design program, you should have a pivot course. So
yeah.
you give them an assignment and literally halfway through the
Yeah.
semester, you change the entire assignment on them and
Exactly,
say,
exactly.
figure
I
it
think,
out.
yeah, I think I actually have come across it. I think that I visited a school somewhere, and I think I talked to one of the guys, and I think they actually do that. They throw sort of like a
That's
wrench
interesting.
halfway through, and I was like, this is great. This
Yeah.
sounds like
That's what
my
reality
afternoon in
is.
the office.
I know it's never going to go as smoothly as you want. Something's going to pop
Yeah,
up.
yeah, exactly.
Some leader's going to go, I don't know about this, or we just found out that the budget's just got
Yeah, yeah,
slashed, or
yeah,
something else. So
yeah.
yeah,
It's
tell them, oh
exactly
yeah,
that's exactly right.
your
That's
budget just
exactly
got
right.
cut in half. Now
Yeah.
you have to do it on half the amount. Like,
It
oh,
usually
okay,
it usually does. It's
yeah,
yeah, it's fascinating how many but it's also I think I've been part of many hiring rounds and been a hiring manager for many years. And you sit in panel interviews, and it's still easy. It's still interesting to see how some of the most mature senior designers and managers are easily swayed by great sketches and great visualization, right?
yeah,
Because, and I
hmm
was fascinated by this. Like, we all just agreed that we want to look for substance that's beyond visualization. Well, it doesn't
yep,
matter what the degree. And then everybody sits in there is just marveling at this, and sort of, I'm always wondering about the psychology and the collective psychology in the room that unfolds at that moment, because maybe everybody's reminded on their earlier days where, they had figured out how to set light in a way that it looks photorealistic and all that nonsense.
hmm
And I'm just always baffled, or was baffled by this. Like, wait, we just agreed that this is not a good candidate. Why is he going further? And I've seen portfolios that look like coffee table books. Fantastic brilliant visualization, zero substance of everything we just mentioned. And that, I think, is where the tools are. It's a testament to the tools, how easy they are to learn. Okay, well done. It's also a testament how powerful they are, but it's also a testament how much they have taken over the conversation. And I have to tell
Mm-hmm.
people all the time when they come to me about portfolio, strip out all these renders. Nobody wants to see this. One or two, fine. But that is not
Yeah.
your job. Your job is to think, to navigate the storytelling, right? There's the internal story that you tell to get folks aligned internally. And then there's the external story. You mentioned marketing and all of this. They
Oh, yeah.
don't have to align. Ideally they do, but if they don't, it's not really. Your main job is the internal story. Get the
Mm,
beehive marching, dancing in the same dance.
mm,
And that is, I think, something design education is not particularly strong right now. Speaking
yeah.
of it, so coming to an end here because you said you usually go longer. We do here too. What would you think design education, I mean, looks like 2030? That's
Oof. I
2035.
think
Let's go a bit further out. If
that
you
is a
can,
good.
sky's the
I
limit
think.
here.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, then there's going to be a robot at the front of the room teaching.
I hope not.
I don't know. Yeah, teaching how to design for robots, and it'll just be teaching other robots. Actually, I don't know. I mean, clearly, I think we're at a very big inflection point. I think those skills that we talked about earlier are very much diametrically opposed. Like I want to sit in a room and sketch or do CAD all day long versus I need to go out and talk to real people and understand what their problems are and then sell that to other people within an organization. Those don't always, it's oil and water. So to find the mixture in or in a person is often kind of difficult. To teach it is almost impossible. But I think we need to we've been focused far too long on, like you said, on that technical component. We haven't been focusing at all on this. How do you think and how do you sell the idea component of the work? And a great example of that, I think, is also when you just look at the portfolios these days. I swear they just take every image that they developed throughout the entire process of a project and throw it in their portfolio as a project. And what I keep telling them is take everything back out and put only back the images and the individual words. The every word and every image needs to tell part of that story. And if it doesn't, if you have like the same image just rotated slightly 3 or 4 times, well, then you don't need those 3 or 4 images. You need one. Pull everything out that doesn't need to be there and make sure you're only putting back the parts that do need to be there because you're telling a story. But right now it's just this muddled mess of just like, oh, here's everything I did. And a lot of times it doesn't even show the actual thought process. I actually talked with a student today, literally, and she explained her project to me. And I'll change some of the details, but let's just say we got through the end of this project explanation, and she did her pitch in a deck, and I said, okay, great. Where's the story? And all you showed me was the technical details here. It does this and this and this. And here's a pretty picture of what I think it should look like. And I said, why does it need to exist? And she went through this beautiful story of like, oh, well, my grandmother, she needs this kind of thing because, her eyesight or something and yada, yada. And therefore I came up with this product as a solution for her needs. And, I think that there's probably a lot of other grandmothers out there who have the same problem. I thought, that's brilliant. Why is it not in here? Why did you not put that into this? Like you didn't sell any of that. All you showed me was the technical details. You're not telling me why this product needs to exist at all, who you're making it for.
Right,
And
right,
yeah, you need to be better at that. So I think
right.
that down the road, we need to get much better at almost training, quasi designer slash salespeople. Because you're right. Like anybody can hit that render button on Midjourney or any of the other design tools and say, hey, go ahead and give me an image. It doesn't even take a good doodle to go, oh, hey, here, BizCom, make this look beautiful. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's all the stuff on either side of that. So, like being able to understand the manufacturing constraints, the budget, the business needs, and then on the other side of it, understand the human component. What do people need? Why do they need it? How do I, how am I going to sell them on the value that this brings to their life? Those are the
Right,
things. So
right,
it's almost
right,
like everything that we're not focusing on now, it's what's going to be important down the road. So that's
right
what I
on,
think
right
design
on,
education might look like.
right. Last question for today. What would you tell a 23-year-old old designer listening to
Mhm.
this, and feeling, well, what would you tell to a 23-year-old designer feeling lost, right, in this day and age, and just listening to this,
Oof.
and what would be your two or
Oh
three
man.
one-liners that
Oof. I'll try to keep it short, but
yeah,
that's a tough one because it is. Yeah, I tend to be fairly blunt with my answers, as you probably have
what
noticed.
you have the chance to
Uh,
be blunt. Three
yeah.
sentences for
No,
or
well, I'm just kidding. I'm in more straightforward with how I sell things, and I don't think it's great right now. It, I hope it will get better. It always has, so there's no reason to believe that it won't. Um, but you're in a tough spot right now. Focus on the things that, I mean, we've just given you a perfect blueprint for how to become a better designer. Go do it. It's all the stuff you don't want to do. Go do that.
All right, there we have it.
It's 100%
There
that.
we have it. All right. Blair, I hope this was fascinating. I hope you get to talk to 300 designers more, right? And maybe in a year we're having the 600
Well, I
milestone
actually,
conversation.
can I amend my answer real quick?
Yes, please.
My one sentence would be go start your own list of 300.
Oh,
That's
here
it.
we go. That's a great one. Yes, we'll take that. So here we go. Dear 23-year-old, go and talk to 300 people. That's actually good. I like that.
Make that a goal this year. If you can, go talk to 300 designers or just people, but try to keep it business or design focused in conversation. Not just don't go have 300 conversations, but if you
Right
can do
on.
it, make that a goal for yourself.
Right on. And before we wrap up here, all this led to you founding a network or starting a network. So
Yes,
talk about this quickly a little bit.
absolutely. So I started by doing in-person meetups. The Let's just say it wasn't happening in my area, and I quickly realized that it it doesn't take, like, you don't have to be somebody special to put together a flyer. Matter of fact, you probably have all the skills right now that you need to go say, "Hey, here's a pretty little thing," and it doesn't even have to be all that fancy. Just put a time and a date and a place and say, "I'm going to be here and we're going to be talking about design." And send it out to every contact you have. Again, if you have 300 plus contacts, it makes it a little bit easier. But you'd be amazed at how many people just want to talk about design, uh, and so I started doing that in person. We had our first meetup in January. It was
Right on.
21 people. I thought it was a phenomenal night. We had our second
Yeah.
one back in August. It was over 100 people. We had corporate
Oh, wow.
sponsors. We
Right on.
had space dedicated and signage and everything. So free food and drinks. So the next one I'm planning for probably end of this year at a design museum here in Atlanta. Let's hope.
Right on.
And then, but yeah, there's also the LinkedIn group called Industrial Designers International, or IDI for short. Please, everybody, go join that group. We're also on Discord and Instagram, Slack. Feel free to join us in any one of those platforms as well. But the idea is it's very short and sweet. I'm trying to connect designers together. I feel
Right
like
on.
the more that we can have these conversations, the better we can talk to each other, then the better we get at selling the value of design to these other organizations, to the other people within the organization and our clients and everybody else. And what I have noticed over the past several months is just this lack of engagement from the design community a lot of the times, not just in the communities that I've built, but in all of the communities. It's just this pattern where they bloom, they form, they bloom, and then they die because nothing happens. So if designers aren't able to meaningfully and consistently contribute in the forums that I have specifically built for them, that I know that those communications aren't happening in the boardrooms in the companies that they're going and working in. They're going to be, instead of standing up and raising their hand and saying, "Hey, I've got an idea," they're going to be sitting there quietly, expecting somebody to call on them, or just waiting for the conversation to, get to the right point, which never happens. You've got to get more bold. You've got to put yourself out there. You've got to start talking to people and understanding how to sell and yourself and being more comfortable with that. Just be okay with it. And I know it's not in most of our DNA, but it's something you can learn if you try and you practice it.
There we go. Right on. So I will link all the mentioned sources and ways to get in touch with you and the community in the show notes and my newsletter. So go over there, sign up, peterbuckle.com. There's a link somewhere to a beautiful newsletter sign up. And Blair, fascinating talking to you. I hope
you as well, Peter.
I hope that community grows and keeps being engaging. I hope it's going to be, what do you say, 2,100? So maybe it's going to be 120, 150 people, right?
Oh, yeah. I think so.
We hope that this podcast maybe helps to get a few folks over there. Last but not least, that's it for this episode. As usual, to everyone out there, if you have questions, follow-ups, mentions, remarks, please send them over. Email designofficehours@peterbuckle.com and follow me on Instagram @designofficehours. And I hope to see you all in the next episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Blair.
Thank you so much, Peter.